wagon, as her mother and grandmother before her wandered through the woods wearing a bell to attract the deer. Father used to say that her mother was the smartest bell mare that ever entered the forest. She'd not only find the deer, but she'd make friends with them and lead them straight as a bee line to where he was hiding. Betsy, you must travel. The Harvester drew the lines taut, and the whip fell smartly. The astonished Betsy snorted and pranced down the valley as fast as she could, but every step indicated that she felt outraged and abused. This was the loveliest day of the season. The sun was shining. The air was heavy with the perfume of flowering shrubs and trees. The orchards of the valley were white with bloom. Farmers were hurrying back and forth across fields, leaving upturned lines of black, swampy mold behind them, and one progressive individual rode a wheeled plow, drove 3 horses, and enjoyed the shelter of a canopy. "Saints preserve us, Belshazzar!" cried the Harvester. "Do you see that? He is one of the men who makes a business of calling me shiftless. Now he thinks he is working. Working! For a full grown man, did you ever see the equal? If I were going that far, I'd wear a tucked shirt, Panama hat, have a pianola attachment, and an automatic fan." The Harvester laughed as he again touched Betsy and hurried to Onabasha. He scarcely saw the delights offered on either hand, and where his eyes customarily took in every sight, and his ears were tuned for the faintest note of earth or tree top, today he saw only Betsy and listened for a whistle he dreaded to hear at the water tank. He climbed the embankment of the railway at a slower pace, but made up time going downhill to the city. "I am not getting a blamed thing out of this," he complained to Belshazzar. "There are riches to stagger any scientist wasting to day, and all I've got to show is one oriole. I did hear his first note and see his flash, and so unless we can take time to make up for this on the home road, we will have to christen it Oriole Day. It's a perfumed golden day, too. I can get that in passing, but how I loathe hurrying. I don't mind planning things and working steadily, but it's not consistent with the dignity of a sane man to go rushing across country with as much appreciation of the delights offered right now as a chicken with its head off would have. We will loaf going back to pay for this. And won't we invite our souls? We will stop and gather a big bouquet of crabapple blossoms to fill the green pitcher for her. Maybe some of their wonderful perfume will linger in her room. When the petals fall, we will scatter them in the drawers of her dresser, and they may distill a faint flower odour there. We can do that to all her furniture, but perhaps she doesn't like perfume. She'll be compelled to after she reaches Medicine Woods. Betsy, you must travel faster." The whip fell again, and the Harvester stopped at the depot with a few minutes to spare. He threw the hitching strap to Belshazzar and ran into the express office with an armload of boxes. "Bill them!" he cried. "It's a rush order. I want it to go on the next express. Almost due, I think. I'll help you, and we can book them afterward." The expressman ran for a truck, and they hastily weighed and piled on boxes. When the last one was loaded from the wagon, a heap more lying in the office were added, pitched on indiscriminately as the train pulled under the sheds of the Union Station. "I'll push," cried the Harvester, "and help you get them on." Hurrying as fast as he could, the expressman drew the heavy truck through the iron gates and started toward the train slowing to a stop, and the Harvester pushed. As they came down the platform, they passed the dining and sleeping cars of the long train and were several times delayed by descending passengers. Just opposite the day coach, the expressman narrowly missed running into several women leading small children and stopped abruptly. A toppling box threatened the head of the Harvester. He peered around the truck and saw they must wait a few seconds. He put in the time watching the people. A gray-haired old man, travelling in a silk hat, wavered on the top step and went his way. A fat woman, loaded with bundles, puffed as she clung trembling a second in fear she would miss the step she could not see. A tall, slender girl with a face coldly white came next, and from the broken shoe she advanced, the bewildered fright of big dark eyes glancing helplessly. The Harvester saw that she was poor, alone, ill, and in trouble. Pityingly he turned to watch her, and as he gauged her height, saw her figure, and a dark coronet of hair came into view, a ghastly pallor swept his face. "Merciful God!" he breathed. "That's my Dream Girl!" The truck started with a jerk. The toppling box fell, struck a passing boy, and knocked him down. The mother screamed, and the Harvester sprang to pick up the child and see that he was not dangerously hurt. Then he ran after the truck, pitched on the box, and whirling, sped beside the train toward the gates of exit. There was the usual crush, but he could see the tall figure passing up the steps to the depot. He tried to force his way, and was called a brute by a crowded woman. He ran down the platform to the gates he had entered with the truck. They were automatic and had locked. Then he became a primal creature being cheated of a lawful mate, and climbed the high iron fence and ran for the waiting room. He swept it at a glance, not forgetting the woman's apartment and the side entrance. Then he hurried to the front exit. Up the street leading from the city there were few people, and he could see no sign of the slight, white-faced girl. He crossed the sidewalk and ran down the gutter for a block, and breathlessly waited the passing crowd on a corner. She was not among it. He tried one more square. Still he could not see her. Then he ran back to the depot. He thought surely he must have missed her. He again searched the women's and general waiting room, and then he thought of the conductor. From him it could be learned where she entered the car. He ran for the station, bolted the gate while the official called to him, and reached the track in time to see the train pull out within a few yards of him. "You blooming idiot!" cried the angry expressman as the Harvester ran against him. "Where did you go? Why didn't you help me? You are white as a sheet. Have you lost your senses?" "Worse," groaned the Harvester. "Worse. I've lost what I prize most on earth. How could I reach the conductor of that train?" "Telegraph him at the next station. You can have an answer in a half hour." The Harvester ran to the office, and with shaking hand wrote this message: "Where did a tall girl with big black eyes and wearing a gray dress take your train? Important." Then he went out and minutely searched the depot and streets. He hired an automobile to drive him over the business part of Onabasha for 3/4 of an hour. Up one street and down another he went slowly where there were crowds, faster as he could, but never a sight of her. Then he returned to the depot and found his message. It read, "Transferred to me at Fort Wayne from Chicago." "Chicago baggage!" he cried, and hurried to the check room. He had lost almost an hour. When he reached the room he found the officials busy and unwilling to be interrupted. Finally he learned there had been a half dozen trunks from Chicago. All were taken save 2, and one glance at them told the Harvester that they did not belong to the girl in gray. The others had been claimed by men having checks for them. If she had been there, the officials had not noticed a tall girl having a white face and dark eyes. When he could think of no further effort to make, he drove to the hospital. Doctor Carey was not in his office, and the Harvester sat in the revolving chair before the desk and gripped his head between his hands as he tried to think. He could not remember anything more he could have done. But since what he had done only ended in failure, he was reproaching himself wildly that he had taken his eyes from the girl an instant after recognizing her. Yet it was in his blood to be decent, and he could not have run away and left a frightened woman and a hurt child. Trusting to his fleet feet and strength, he had taken time to replace the box also, and then had met the crowd and delay. Just for the instant it appeared to him as if he had done all a man could, and he had not found her. If he allowed her to return to Chicago, probably he never would. He leaned his head on his hands and groaned in discouragement. Doctor Carey whirled the chair so that it faced him before the Harvester realized that he was not alone. "What's the trouble, David?" he asked.